right.
All right. We
Jonah
did it.
Kest.
Achi.
Welcome to the show,
Thank
Achi.
you.
Good to have you, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Been a minute.
Yeah, man. We had gotten to reconnect just a few weeks ago, and here we are. So
And we are.
I felt like we should have recorded the last conversation.
You know what? We had Eric on the show, and it's exactly what we said. We're like, we started the podcast for 30, 40 minutes on the phone before we even hit the room. And we're like, all right, we gotta save all the good stuff for the room. So here we are.
So let's let the intention be to just free flow, forget about the lights in the fancy studio, even though that is a plus. And
Yeah,
I can't wait to just collaborate and exchange ideas.
absolutely, brother. Well, a good place to start. When researching you, I found a lot of interesting stuff that instead of me kind of picking them apart and asking specific questions, I just wanted to start with a very simple question. Who is Jonah Kest?
Oof. First question out the gates. You know, this is a unique question because I could answer with all my achievements. I could answer with all my, biomarkers or my family genetic lineage or my name. But really, not to get too crazy right off the bat, but, I just want to make a note that it doesn't really matter who Jonah is. It's just a name. It's a silly name that my parents gave me. So
It's a nice name. I don't mind Jonah.
I like it. It took me a while to fully accept it, but again, it's just a name. So just to start with that, but I guess just to give a more general answer of who I am or perhaps what I stand for, I always like to just keep it simple and say I'm a yogi or a yoga teacher. For me, yoga's always been a vehicle and a way to inspire, to speak to people, to connect with people, to help and serve people. So for me, I feel like the highest version of myself is to basically serve others in a way that uplifts them and helps them find their full potential. And a yogi's goal is to eventually find their dharma. So just to live in alignment, to be true to themselves. And I feel like that's what I'm continuously every day working on. It's not easy. But hopefully, I don't know if that was the answer you were looking for, but we can kind of
It's the
start
answer
there.
I got, and I love it. When you say it's not easy, can you elaborate a little bit? What isn't easy, especially nowadays, living
Yeah.
that type of intentional life?
The reason I think I say that is because it's so easy to not do it and to not live in autopilot. I think it takes effort and it takes work to continuously make those choices to stay in the present and to ultimately, live a life that is in purpose. So I guess at some point it can be easy, and so there should be this kind of effortless surrender, this conscious surrender, where things just sort of start to unfold, especially when you're living right, morally, environmentally. When you're living in alignment, you're living right, things should just start to naturally unfold. But usually there's like the, what do they call those? When you're addicted to something?
Obsession?
No. Withdrawal symptoms.
Okay.
We're so used to living a certain way. So when we break away from that, there's friction, there's resistance, there's withdrawal symptoms to, it doesn't just have to be nicotine withdrawal symptoms. There's withdrawal symptoms to your old way of thinking.
Yeah.
So there's that resistance there. That's why I say it's not easy. And anyone that's had any sort of real transformation has been through that. And, there's so many analogies in nature and, the lotus growing out of the mud, and nothing great or beautiful hasn't been through, resistance or struggle, darkness.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, to me, I feel like it's top of mind in, my personal relationships, relationship with myself, business, where it's like it's the famous saying, right? If you expect, different results, you can't be doing the same stuff you did before, right? So there's this constant, change and evolvement and adaptability that you need to really have within you in order to eventually just grow, right? Like there's it's not necessarily a matter of better or worse, left or right, right? It's more, are you growing to the direction in which, is something that you see worthwhile pursuing? And I think that's a lot of, and there's a lot to unpack there because there's a lot of risk built in there and a lot of ifs and buts and should I.
Yeah.
But essentially, if you're in the trajectory of growth in terms of how you feel about the path that you're on, that's kind of the North Star, or at least it should be.
I think that's a good point to kind of bring it full circle. Living in one's purpose is called dharma in the yoga tradition. And really there's 4 just simple steps if this is kind of an abstract thing for you to kind of wrap your mind around. And the first thing, you already nodded to it, is just kind of listen to that intuition of what you're naturally drawn to. So whatever, and in order to find that, you have to experiment. You have to kind of try everything. Otherwise, you'll never really know what you're innately drawn to. And from there, you start to notice what your innate gifts are, because everyone has, innate gifts. And then from there, once you find out what those gifts are, that's when you start to double down on those and really go all out. Like, what does it look like if you were to just say, you know what, I found this thing and I'm just going to go all out. I'm going to give it everything. And then the third step is to, let go of the fruits. We hear this in a lot of religions. We hear this in a lot of different things.
Not easy.
Don't focus on the results. Be unattached from the results and just kind of, just like a relationship, you can't have expectations. You can't be attached to the results. And then the final thing is the surrender, right? Just, you have to surrender to the universe, whatever that means to you. And with those 4 things, I think you will eventually live in purpose and you won't have any regrets. And I think you will make impact.
I love all of those. I'm curious to know from you, like, again, it's like in today's times, with all the distractions, with all the madness that's happening, whether it's, political or otherwise, what is the toughest one to execute on from those 4? My mind already goes to, for me, which one that is, but
what is the toughest one?
Like the last one is tough.
The last one's
right?
tough.
Like people find it very, very hard to quote unquote surrender.
I would agree with the last one because, we can say that we're unattached, but when you really surrender, it shows. It's like it's a part of you. And that just doesn't happen intellectually. It needs to happen like, you need to feel it like in an experience, or you really need to like live it. So I would say the reason that's the hardest is because, a lot of people tend to, when they think of surrender, they think of, oh, I'm just going to give up. They think of it more of like a submission, but really it's like, it's a conscious choice to let go. It's not giving up. It's not a passive thing. It actually takes strength. And they talk about it in a lot of the ancient yoga texts, like the Gita. The main character Arjuna is often confronted with these difficult, choices to make, and ultimately he has to just kind of surrender to God or to the universe in order to let that thing come through. So easier said than done, like, right? And you can practice this in the small things, and that's why it's important to have daily practices where even like Shavasana, not to bring this too much into yoga, but you practice surrendering. Shavasana means corpse pose, but really it's the final surrender for that practice. And you do those small letting go. Eventually, when the big let go happens, it's not too bad.
No.
And we're all gonna have to experience the big letting go, by the way.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
No one can escape that.
You embody this it's like you're a Nike athlete / yogi. You're a trained yogi, of course. It's you marry a lot of different things. You have an incredible eye for creative, I think, when you're looking at just your representation of how you want to be represented to the world.
Thank you, brother.
It's very easy to kind of just lean into, everything is great in Jonah's world, right? What are some common misconceptions that you think people have about you?
Yeah, I think, it's easy to just kind of look like you're, living a perfect life with no no ups or downs when you just view it through the lens of social media. But I think, we're all human and we all experience those same ups and downs, whether you're, on top of a mountain or you're in Miami Beach. It doesn't really matter. We all have a mind, and we all experience, the union of opposites within that, whether it be an emotion or, we have to experience one of the truths, which is we're all going to lose people. There's nothing you will never have to say goodbye to, So I guess to answer your question more specifically, what are things that I maybe go through that others maybe don't see? Is that the question?
Mm-hmm. Any misconception, anything that, when you're, let's call it for what it is, right? When you're a public figure, you get tagged with labels, titles, probably mostly good, but.
Yeah, I mean, if you spend a lot of time with me, you'll very quickly notice that, there's holes. And I think that the more vulnerable you can be, and anyone that's graduated from a yoga teacher training program has to spend a month with me, it's kind of hard to hide from these things. You can, if we just have one podcast or one yoga class, it might be like, oh, he's got it figured out. But you spend a month with somebody, pretty quickly you can start to see the holes. And it's not a bad thing. It's just we're all human. We all have holes. And I think the more quickly you can be vulnerable and show those sides of you amongst a group of people with awareness, of course, that's something we should talk about. I think the more quickly the wall dissolves and there's greater connection. So, for example, I still get really nervous every time I teach a yoga class,
Wow. I would never think that.
And it's not like a nervous, like
butterflies nervous?
Like
or
butterfly nervous, but
like before a game.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're an athlete, it's like the butterfly's nervous, but there's always this little seed of doubt that's like never goes away. No matter how many times I excuse my language, have taught this class.
We're good.
The whole time, there's this little seed of doubt. And usually, after the first 10, 15 minutes, it starts to go away. But I think that's a good thing. I think if you're too certain in any field or anything that you do, it's only going to be a danger. It's only going to limit you. That doubt, actually, I use it as a superpower. I think it really does help me be more humble. And when I say humble, like it gives me humility, so I'm open to something changing and knowing that, what I'm doing isn't the only way to do it. Yep. It helps me become a better listener because now I'm really starting, instead of me just going through the motions of what I did, I'm treating this experience like it's the first time I've done it. So I'm much more open to, like you said, adapting. So I use the doubt as a superpower to stay in my humility and empathy. But at the same time, you got to be really careful because, you have to trust your experiences. You have to trust your certainty. This certainty is wisdom, right? Because you've experienced something so many times over again. That's wisdom. Wisdom is experiencing the same shit over and over again until it makes sense.
And then hopefully deploying a different behavior.
Exactly. Because wisdom comes from direct experience. You can't read a book and say, oh, I'm wise now. Yeah. You can read the book and then live it, and now you're wise. So, yeah, hopefully that kind of all made sense there, but you don't want doubt to cripple you because if it does, then it starts to work against you. And everyone's going to experience this storm, this enemy of doubt, because it's within all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, again, there's a lot of things that we can kind of surface, to the point where like today you feel it a lot more present in everyone and in everyday's life. But we'll keep that for afterwards.
Yeah.
Segueing a little bit to what it takes to be in a pocket of mind and body alignment from a health standpoint. Again, like you've practiced, mindfulness and I'm assuming from a spiritual standpoint and a physical standpoint for a very, very long time. Has it always been the case for you where you were able to live a healthy, driven lifestyle, or did you have times where it may have not been the case?
Great question. I kind of grew up with yoga. I was raised in a yoga family. So these ideas and principles were always kind of nodded at and reminded to me at a young age, which I do feel extremely fortunate. But just because you have that doesn't mean it's instilled in you, you still have to make that choice, right? And you have to embody it. I don't care how many good teachers you've had, you know. But I am really grateful that those seeds were planted at a young age. But I just remember, you know, when I was in high school and I'd leave a yoga class and I was feeling amazing, right? Like my body was feeling so good. I was feeling so loose going into the basketball practice. You know, I'd always stretch before. And I'm like, I still am frustrated with my little brother. Like that didn't help me. And it's supposed to, right? Because yoga is not just a physical practice. And you talked about mind and body. So then I was like, okay, I took another yoga class. I'm feeling amazing. And I'm like, I'm still pissed off at my father. I'm like, what is going on? You know, and then eventually, and I was still reactive. I'm an Aries, so I was really just kind of had a short fuse and just like to argue and rub people up the wrong way. It's just confrontational. It might be my nature, but I don't want to accept that as my nature. You know, I wanted to transcend that. So I was introduced to Vipassana meditation, which for me, from my father, who gave me it gave me a different lens in which to approach my yoga practice, where it became more about the mind, where I stopped measuring my progress physically and was starting to look at my progress more mentally. You know, how calm was I? How resilient was I? You know, was I less reactive, more, you know, equanimous in all my sort of relationships or experiences? So for me, that was like the breaking point where it stopped becoming this posture ladder.
How old were you, by the way?
Probably when I sat my first Vipassana, I was 18.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
All right. So.
Yeah, it was a family tradition, but it really confronts you. And I think I was drawn to it because the style of meditation is very straightforward and it's not sugar-coated for the Western mind. You know, it is what it is. And the technique is very simple. Anybody can do it, but it's brutal. It's brutal. It will like open you up and make you so vulnerable and make you want to run away so bad, you know? But I highly recommend it because we don't often get that opportunity to just sit with ourselves in silence.
Is that what it is? Versus a guided meditation, everything, it just forces you to just sit there?
Without getting too much into the actual technique, it's really just anapana, which is mindfulness of the breath. And they do go into, like, the actual Vipassana technique is slightly more advanced. It's like body scanning and sensation-based. So just observing different sensations and working with that. Because I guess we'll just go into it for a second. But essentially, in their lineage and style, sensations are just mirroring the deepest level of your mind, right? Yeah. So if I were to tell you, like, you know, observe your mind. I mean, you can observe your thoughts and that is helpful, right? But ultimately, it's very superficial. Like in order to observe your mind, you have to observe something else. And
you need to be able to observe the actual architect versus just what is happening from the architect.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I think the genius to the Buddha and to this style of meditation is that they say for every physical sensation you have, it mirrors the deepest level of your mind. So for every thought that you have or emotion, it manifests into some sort of physical sensation. So if you have a thought of anger, you're going to get hot. You're going to feel heat. If you have a thought of jealousy, it's going to come out. Maybe you're not aware of it yet, but there is a physical sensation somewhere on the body. So they almost reversed it. They said, let's focus on the physical sensations, observe those and choose not to react, wait for them to pass, and then you take it out from the root. So instead of just ignoring it, you're actually feeling it, you're internalizing it, and then it goes away from the root and it doesn't come back. And of course, you can't do it. It's layers and layers. We're like onions, you know. It takes a while for everything to be stripped away, but that's essentially the technique.
Very interesting.
It takes time though. There's no shortcut. It's not just like one ayahuasca ceremony and you're done. You know, this takes years and maybe lifetimes.
I was just gonna say, how long do I need to see incremental improvement?
I mean, I think, you know, if we were to just sit here and observe each other in stillness and silence and meditate together, we'd feel immediate benefit.
We should do that.
We can. I would love to.
We should definitely do that towards the end at some point.
Let's do it. And that's
dedicate
anyone
5 minutes, whatever it is, I'm down.
Anyone that's listening, even just one conscious deep breath can shift your entire destiny. And that's what I think I really want to stress is like, you don't have to sit for a full 10-day Vipassana. I mean, of course, if you have the the flexibility in your schedule and you have the freedom to do that for yourself, why not? We're only in this human existence once. Why not see what's on the other side of that? Because we're in a world full of a lot of distractions right now. I mean, our minds never have the opportunity to be quiet. And that means the more noise you have in your mind, the less time, or really the less choices you have. Because talk about, the name of your company, Conscious Bar, we're not conscious. We're just rolling in our own thoughts that turn into habit patterns and that blindly direct our life. So we need more conscious rituals or habits that help us quiet down the mind so then we can make actual choices from a balanced state. If that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I think whenever anyone touches on that specific point, it always reminds me of Joe Dispenza in the back of my mind, who was talking always about, by default, if you wake up in the morning and you're programmed to okay, I'm going to brush my teeth, I'm going to look at the phone, open the same exact apps, have the same exact breakfast, blah, 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 by default, by definition, you're living in the past. And it's really hard to do anything that progresses you towards the future if that is your program.
Yes. Well said.
And so I'm very intentional about trying to disrupt that. And it could be small little things as little as putting your phone in different places outside of the room. There's certain healthy practices that I try and not sway away from too much when it comes to sleep and drinking a nice big tall glass of water before I dunk in the acidic coffee in my stomach, which,
Yep.
it's a whole nother conversation. But
hey, we can talk about that too. I want to learn from you.
I haven't been that good. And he actually brought me some coffee from Guatemala. Ooh. Geisha beans. I don't know if you know what the meaning of that is, but it's some of the most specialized. The coffee beans that are getting awarded as the top coffee beans in the world every single year are usually geisha.
Wow.
We're not going to go to the whole process, but they're very uniquely grown, fermented, well taken care of beans.
Wow. Single origin, I'm sure.
Single origin. So I woke up today and I had
Just like
geisha
your
beans
cacao.
right after a tiny bit of water, and stomach felt a little tumble. I think I just developed a little bit of a sensitivity to acidic substance first thing in the morning.
Yeah, no, we definitely have to get into just strict health.
Yeah.
And some, I think that could be really interesting.
We'll get there now.
Yeah.
Just to wrap up that conversation though.
Yeah.
Do you think that men today, specifically men, are soft mentally and spiritually?
Interesting. It's such a generalized question. I don't want to assume. I mean, I can speak for myself. I think for sure, I feel like I'm soft to some extent, I can only speak for myself. No, I mean, it depends how you look at it. I mean, look, I can't lie to you and say that, I didn't drive here in my air-conditioned car that's fully electric and autopilot drove me all the way here, and that I had my favorite cup of coffee in Miami Beach, and that I woke up and played pickleball and did my yoga practice. I'm kind of soft. But, at the same time, I think softness, and look, I know masculinity is really important right now, and I'm kind of playing the devil's advocate. So for anyone's listening and saying, Jonah's soft, it's okay. You can yell it out. But I think we need, yes, there's a difference between being masculine, but also having softness, right? Yeah. To bend with the wind, kind of like the bamboo, not to get too woo, but I think that's something we're lacking. I think yoga will balance you, at least some sort of yogic style practice. It doesn't have to be asana. It doesn't have to be triangle pose, Because for example, if a really masculine, like the epitome of a masculine man comes to yoga, what is yoga going to do to them?
I mean, I'm not the epitome of that guy, but I used to be always strong and very fit.
You're an athlete. You're macho, and I'm not using you as an example. I'm just saying.
We should though, because what I was about to say is when I came to some of my first yoga classes, I'm like,
what did it do to you?
I felt extremely out of shape. Mm-hmm. I felt more mentally weak than physically weak. just because, yoga is a lot about just, again, controlling posture, controlling breath, controlling trying to be comfortable with the discomfort.
Right.
And not to diss anyone else, but like I would see slightly out of shape 50, 60-year-olds doing what I am really struggling to do with a lot of ease and comfort and peace. And I'm like shaking, doing Warrior One, and
Yeah.
just
Well,
honestly
so
just
basically
feeling lost.
I mean, your first class is gonna make you feel a little like that.
Well, the first like 10 classes.
Ultimately, if you take that under a microscope, what it was doing was it was softening you.
Yeah.
Because you came from being a professional athlete, it started to soften you physically and mentally. It kind of gave you, for instance, what you need. You didn't really need to be strengthened because you're already strong, right? You didn't need to be lifting more dumbbells or shoulder press. You needed to open up, whether that be through your hips or through your mind. You needed a different perspective. Now, if you come to yoga too soft, if we took a really soft person who's never done a workout in their life, or maybe is just really weak-minded, always impulse-driven, yoga's gonna give you, and I hate to just keep bringing it back to yoga, it could be anything that's, a practice, a discipline. It could be martial arts. It could be whatever you want it to be. But that is going to strengthen you. So I always say yoga gives you what you need. It's going to give you some firmness, not just, physically, but it's going to, give you some confidence, some certainty. It's going to give you some discipline in your mind. So I guess coming back to the masculine question, I think what we need is balance.
Yep.
We don't need more men who are, masculine and abusing that masculinity. We don't need more men trying to act like Game of Thrones, even though that's what they're trying to program us to be. So I think there is an overcompensation right now online and just in our culture because we're overcompensating from losing that role, and we just need balance.
Yep.
That's my opinion.
Love it. Nutrition.
Ooh.
What role does nutrition play in your life specifically when you are trying to keep a very strong alignment between mind, body, and everything else?
I think nutrition is extremely, extremely important. And before we get into like what foods I think are good, what foods are not,
Let's take a bite of chocolate.
Yeah, let's slow down here. Can we practice something?
Yes.
Let's take like a small bite.
I was actually going to take a deep breath before that.
Yeah. See how you I did the same thing. I think I ate one of your bars in 30 seconds, and Renee was so mad because it was the first bar you gave me, and I finished it. And
she was
didn't
mad
have
just
any.
because she didn't have any.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if we just kind of like take the bar and we like close our eyes, because when you close your eyes and you take one sense out, all your other senses start to amplify. And you just kind of start to smell the aromas, and not only that, but you start to visualize, all the steps that it took to get to this place that we're in right now. All the cacao farmers, the soil, the sun, the water, the packaging efforts, the transportation, basically every step you start to become aware of, and the appreciation. And then you put it in your mouth, and instead of just swallowing it, you just kind of let it dissolve. And notice any textures or flavors. Kind of has this like nice tartness and sweetness. And it becomes this, this full sensory experience where your digestive system actually has an opportunity to turn on and go through that entire process. It's like a sauna, you can't just walk into a sauna turning on the switch. It takes a while for the rocks to warm up and then, instead of reaching again for the next chocolate bar, because that's our initial reaction, right? You just want one more. How was that experience for you? Versus the first
my own
bite.
chocolate for the first time today.
I know you've done
That
this
was
before.
phenomenal.
Thank you.
I have, but I'm going to be honest with you. It's been a very long time and since I've consciously eaten a conscious bar.
Wow.
Not going to lie.
Well, dude, it's on the wrapper. And honestly, before I even knew you, of course, you're kind of like a Miami legend. I've been hearing about you for years. And I always, if you live in Miami, you've seen the conscious bar, whether it's at a local restaurant or a grocery store. And Yeah, I mean, the bar in itself is a reminder to slow down and appreciate the smallest, most subtle flavors and things. And this could be a practice, right? Just like yoga, if you, instead of just taking a deep breath or going to a meditation class, you could literally in your car just take a little piece of chocolate and use that as the tool to bring you back to the present moment, right? There's different ways and tools, and we need more and more rituals that bring us back to the present. Because we're all, like you said, we're always living in the past. Everything is a reaction based upon the past, and therefore our future is completely not up to us.
You're hired.
Yeah. But I love the name, man.
I don't want to do a taste testing without Jonah present in the room.
Let's do a workshop. And I was so grateful you gave me the bars for my last retreat.
Oh, yeah. How was it?
It was amazing. So I've heard of, there was this guy in the yoga world. His name's David Ramanelli.
Okay.
And he's kind of like an OG, sort of up there with my pops. My pops used to invite him to teach. And he had a workshop called Yoga and Chocolate. And I never took the class, but I had heard about it. And he had taken the chocolate and basically brought it into the yoga experience. And people just loved it. So I was like,
is it now like turned into the whole ceremonial cacao follows yoga practice?
No, it's not.
It's very
not.
different.
It's his own thing. It's not like cacao.
But I'm saying, did people take inspiration from that, or ceremonial cacao and yoga totally different thing?
It's a wholly different thing.
Got it.
Ceremonial cacao goes that goes to the beginning of time. You know,
sure. The Mayans.
You can't compete with the Mayans. This guy's just probably a white dude from the Midwest that just thought it was a cool idea. But I respect it because it worked, and he gained a lot of popularity. But I tried it. Long story short, in this yin workshop. And man, it just brought everyone together. And especially after being in your body like that, after a yin class, just that sweetness at the end just really brought it full circle. So I'm really appreciative.
No, 100%. Back to the nutrition question.
Yes, we're always taking detours.
Listen, this is gotta have some fun in these conversations. There's a lot of people that are seeking it's not so much, seeking the right protocol, the right programs, the right foods.
Yep.
It's more of just, like you said, like there's this terminology floating around a lot now. It's intuitive eating, intuitive living, intuitive mind, body, and soul alignment. Mm-hmm. You've touched on it before. Much easier said than done for many, many, many people, especially if they're not in that pocket. Of having done this for years, of having, experts around them to kind of guide them. What are the top 3 pieces of advice maybe that you could give when it comes to how to incorporate the right nutrition in order for you to really optimize for performance, but in life in general, not swaying away from athletics and yoga, just
longevity. Okay. So this is again, there's so many people that are just going to tell you this is the right way to eat, across all human beings, all ethnicities. This is the diet, right? Which I just don't buy. I think we all have insanely unique genetic lineages that come from different parts of the world, right? My Eastern European roots are going to be different than, his Guatemalan roots, right? Our ancestors ate different things. But let's take one step back, and I will answer your question because I know we've been taking a lot of detours.
I love it.
But there's 3 kinds of diets that I really think we should be aware of. And the first diet is called an ego-centered diet. And an ego-centered diet, it's a little bit of a misleading name, but it's essentially you're eating for your cravings. So whatever you're craving, you sort of just go. If I'm craving sugar, I'm going to eat sugar. You're not being conscious of what you're eating, essentially.
It's the snackers of the world.
Yeah. You're just, if you're craving, if you pass a McDonald's and you're like, oh, you just go, that's ego-centered diet because you're listening to your thoughts and cravings. Second diet is a health-centered diet where you're consciously making choices and efforts to optimize your health, right? So whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Like if you genuinely believe whey protein is good for you and you intentionally put that in your smoothie, that's a health-centered diet. And then the third form of diet is called a heart-centered diet, where you're still eating for health, but ultimately the purpose around your diet is for the planet, for all beings, for the environment, and that usually goes towards like non-harming, right? So usually a heart-centered diet is
Vegan diet?
is more plant-based. Doesn't have to be fully plant-based. So those are like the three categories I like to put it in, instead of just keto, vegan, this, pescatarian. I call myself a selectarian because I just select what I eat.
Yeah.
But I had some massive health issues.
What is it?
A selectarian, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But I had some massive health issues in college. I was basically born and raised a vegan. My father, I really admire him for, instilling that ideology and taking that chance to raise me a certain way. I did, in a way, we make fun of him, and I say, I was kind of your experiment, because he didn't have enough science to he took a big risk. I could have, gotten really sick. You just didn't know back then. There's not as much research.
Were you healthy as a kid? Did you always feel healthy and fit and strong, or?
I never felt like I was lacking as a kid.
Okay.
But later on, some things started to show up. We were definitely very heavy on soy, heavy on seitan, which is wheat gluten.
Yep.
So a lot of things that could irritate the gut lining. He didn't know. He was just doing his best.
Sure.
And earth balance instead of butter, which is a fake butter that the main ingredients like canola oil or whatever.
Yeah. It's more like margarine, no?
Right. My parents didn't know what seed oils were, and either did yours.
Most of our
probably.
parents, yeah. No.
So, and carnivorish could probably,
Oh yeah, shout out to carnivorish.
I might have you call my dad after this and tell him how. No, but
Go beyond it.
The intentions were pure, right? Now, where did I want to go with this? Because we gotta sort of wrap up this diet thing.
The three type of diets.
The three type of diets. So essentially, when I was in college, I got sick. I went to go visit my grandparents.
Okay.
And as soon as he picked me up from the airport, this whole journey this was in Australia, by the way. He wanted to heal me because I was very sick and we didn't know what it was. Takes me to a restaurant. He gives me the menu. He's kind of cuckoo, my grandpa. And he goes, I want you to quickly scan the menu, and the first thing that pops up that you're drawn to, I want you to order, even if you've never had it before. And it was a steak.
And you've never had a steak at this point?
Never in my life.
So you've never had any form of meat or dairy or nothing
Ask
until
any of my brothers until college.
Wow.
And I ate a steak, and it was so weird chewing it, but it made me feel good, right? Now, 10 years later, I'm like, I eat everything, but I try to do it consciously. I mix everything. But now there's just so much confusion, and this is the reason I brought up that story is, Brian Johnson, the world's leading health expert has the most biomarkers studied, is plant-based, and he thinks that's the right way. Carnivorish is going to tell you, go eat pasture-raised eggs and real grass-fed, grass-finished, meat. And you know what? Paul Saladino is going to tell you another thing, and all these people have different opinions. But at the end of the day, you have to trust intuitively what your body needs and let it be unprocessed, right? Your body's not going to tell you it needs a Cheez-It. Peel back the layers, go back to organic, go back to unprocessed. But that's my point, is don't listen to any specific person. Always come back to yourself and take advice, but that's my opinion. And make adaptations, right? If that coffee felt a little acidic, maybe blend it with some cream or some butter to take down the acidity or help it, neutralize so the caffeine lasts longer. There's so many things you can do, man. I'm not a health expert, but it's just been really interesting to see how some of the top scientists, like even Andrew Huberman, has different opinions than Brian Johnson. And it's like, who do you fucking listen to?
It's hard. Like I can tell you, like for myself, speaking for myself, I think it's I mean, you again, intuitive, right? Like just intuitive eating for me. And I've done a little bit of trial and error. So when COVID hit, I feel like that was the experiment time for everyone, right. To just start doing different things that they may have done until now. They had more time, more mental energy to put and direct into a certain channel and exploration. Mm-hmm. And so growing up in Israel, Eastern family, right? Like there's no vegans like in those.
But ironically, now
it's Tel Aviv is one of the top vegan friendly cities in the world.
In the world.
Yes, in the world. In terms of options, but don't forget that also Middle Eastern and Mediterranean food in general, it just has when you sit there and you have all the mezes and the pitas and the falafel and all of that is vegan.
And
right?
people are going to tell you chickpeas are bad for you?
Nah.
What? Come on
now. Yeah, but for me, I played around with, more of a plant-based leaning diet. I was, pescatarian for a while, not, strict, but just I ate less of red meat, less chicken, slightly less eggs, just to see how I would feel.
Now, is it hard for you to do that, or was it like, okay, this is just how I live, this is normal? Did you have to like go out of your way to eat less meat?
No, not at all.
That's an interesting insight.
Not at all. And I think because, well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that contribute towards that because I like to spend time in the kitchen. Right. I don't have enough time to spend in the kitchen. I like to cook. I like to eat my own, my own food and my own creations, right?
Well, that's also another way to be healthy. Just make your own food because you can actually choose the ingredients, right? You can be very aware of everything that goes into it.
Yeah. But there were days where I felt lighter and maybe better too. Maybe it's placebo, maybe it's not. But when I reintroduced meat into my diet, I felt it right away. Like for me, red meat specifically, I just feel a little more fueled with energy, a little stronger, a little bit more. So what I'm looking for, resilient.
Yeah, and
physically,
dude, you look like not just saying this because you're sitting across from me, but you look healthy. You don't look like you have an extra ounce of, you don't have another pound that you don't need on your body. You don't look too skinny. You don't look too muscular, too fat, I'm
trying to gain a little bit, but I keep taking one step forward and two steps backwards. Too many injuries.
And that's what it takes. And I think the key to all this stuff is moderation, right? Balance. This is what, Buddha kept coming back to is moderation. And even with diet, like all these guys, like, carnivores, like, he looks healthy, and he looks good, but it's like, were we really designed to eat that much meat? I think meat's great. I feel great after I eat a steak. But were we designed to eat meat every single day? Look at our ancestors. We didn't have it that accessible.
Yeah, you would catch it once
a month. Even paleo, most of it, their diet was nuts and berries. Things that they could pick and that they had access to. But eventually when they got the kill, it was part of our evolution. But they had it maybe, once or twice a week?
Yeah.
With extreme amount of fasting. And that just goes to show you that our body can't. Over time, I think we're going to start seeing that the body is going to suffer and struggle from, digesting carcasses every single day. I mean, look, like it takes a lot of power and energy, right? And they're saying our gut is connected to our longevity and our lifespan. And I think the less we make this work, the more longer we're going to live. Now, from a performance perspective, maybe you need that extra protein. They're saying get it a gram of protein for every pound on your body.
Yeah, that's tough for me to do.
That's tough. But
without supplements.
Go back to I love it. Like eat meat, supplement with meat. It's better than, drinking rice bran protein. But, also fill yourself up with fiber and antioxidants and plants too.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, because you travel a lot, you experience a lot of different cultures, a lot of different habits, customs, way of living and eating specifically too. Is there anything in particular that you notice when you travel, especially to Asia, India, like those type of areas?
Yeah.
When it comes specifically to nutrition and how that's compared to what's going on here in the U.S.?
Yeah, there's two countries that really shifted my lens on health, and the first one's Japan. Japan has a blue zone. Yep. And
what's it called again?
It's
that
called
area?
Okinawa.
It is
Okinawa. And if you look at their diets, I mean, it's mostly plant-based, right? Lots of sweet potatoes, yams, Japanese sweet potatoes.
Purple, no?
It's purple, yeah. And a lot of really good vegetables and rice and fish, right? It's common sense. And then, you look at places like India, right? India is interesting because we kind of India is starting to copy America, not in a good way.
Yeah.
There's more McDonald's in India than the U.S. now, which is kind of sad, right? Because considering cows are considered sacred beings in India, they are the number one killer in the world when it comes to cows. And they're the number one leather manufacturer in the world.
That I can somehow wrap my head around, but
But how lost are you as a country and as a culture when you're killing you're the mass producer and exporter of something that you consider to be sacred. There's a huge contradiction there. But India is known for its Ayurvedic roots, right? And an Ayurvedic diet is essentially customized to your dosha, which is like your nature, or kind of like I don't know how to describe it. But, depending on your dosha, they give you a different diet, right? Some people can do milk. Some people need more acidity. Some people need no spicy. Some people can do spicy.
Yep.
And when I went to India, it's the only country where I have like no issue being plant-based, because the flavors are so potent, right? And the protein from the lentils and the...
Have you ever been to Bombay Darbar here? Bombay, not Darbar,
Is
Bombay
it
Corner.
in Wynwood?
No, it's like a little tiny hole in the wall. It's almost like a deli.
Where is
and
it?
It's like 5 to 10 minutes off of Calle.
Okay.
Not in the area
It's
that
probably
you would
incredible.
think. It's incredible.
Okay, I need to go.
Because I know you went to...
You commented on
that
that.
spot looked fire in New York.
I love Indian.
Here, and there's ghee here too.
Oof.
But I haven't been in a minute.
Well, ghee is like a superfood, right? Because it's like clarified butter.
Not ghee butter. So like it's the Indian spot.
It's
in
called
Kendall,
ghee?
It's called ghee.
Oh.
Like G.
I was gonna go on a rant with ghee.
GHEE something.
I would love to hear Sean's perspective on ghee.
On ghee butter.
Yeah, because it has a lot of metaphorical things too, right? It's like they heat up the butter, and then from that purification process, I mean, I've seen it made in India. It's made in a giant cauldron, and it's smoking. It looks like a movie. It's cinematic, and essentially, all the impurities rise up to the top. They take a big spoon and they scoop it off, and then they repeat the process, right? So it always brings me back to like, we need something like that where we heat ourselves up, whether it's a sauna. All the impurities come up through our sweat or through our mind, and then we observe, we scoop it off, and then we start again. And this is the process of purification, right? No matter how clean of a life you think you live, we all develop and accumulate dirt. It's impossible. We live in a toxic world now. That's the sad, harsh truth. So we need practices where we go from absorption to elimination. So we're constantly absorbing. Absorption comes much easier to us as human beings. We absorb conversations, we absorb light, but we don't have as much elimination as we think. And elimination is often a lot more difficult because it can be not just painful, but uncomfortable. So I guess that would be my message, is find different rituals or practices where you actually leave with less than you came with, and you feel lighter and more purified, like ghee. What's really lighting you up? And what are you scooping off the top?
Interesting.
Hopefully we're not taking this metaphor that far.
No. I got you. I was using ghee I was using it for cooking in a long time. For some reason, I just reverted back to good grass-fed butter, but
Good.
yeah.
They're both good.
To be honest with you, I don't know enough science to support one over the other.
It's better than canola oil.
A little bit.
It's better than grapeseed oil.
Just to wrap that question, because I'm actually very, very, very curious. Because obviously, so many people talk about, like, with gluten specifically.
Yep.
People, gluten sensitivities, fly to Paris, Rome, whatever, eat a ton of baguettes and just feel fine.
I've heard a lot of fun stuff on this. Keep going.
Is there anything that you really notice once you have extensive travel and you're eating in a certain environment, then you come back into the U.S. Or are you at the point where you just make very, very smart decisions and you just don't feel or notice differences that much?
Of course you can eat better in other countries just because the soil is more nutrient dense. Like Sean says, you can eat pasta in Rome and feel amazing just because of the wheat is higher quality and it's not GMO. I think we're going to be hopefully experiencing a lot of changes in the U.S. with our food growth, consumer economy. But for me personally, gluten, it's not that I stay away from it. Renee, my fiance, is celiac, so naturally there's never really bread in the house. But sometimes I like a croissant, life's too short to not enjoy a croissant.
Have a croissant every
Are
once
you
in a
kidding me? I don't care how healthy you are. Like, eat a croissant, man.
That's
or
intuitive
like
eating.
a sourdough, like Zach the Baker sourdough. Are you kidding me? And if
Have
you
you
look
been
at
to Don Marcelo yet?
No, is that another
yeah,
spot I
check it
need?
out.
I gotta get a list from you, man. I feel new to Miami, but we got some good food here.
Domicelo and Caracas Bakery.
Oof.
Those are my top two in Miami, by the way.
I've heard of Caracas.
Caracas
That's
Bakery
the
is right here
Venezuelan, right?
in Venezuela.
Yeah. So like sourdough is, of course, it's fermented, right? Anything fermented, it does a lot of that work that your digestive system is already needing to do. So it's going to digest easier. So if you're going to eat bread, sourdough bread's a great option. For me, like one thing that I've noticed that's worked for me, it might not work for everyone, especially women, is intermittent fasting. And I've noticed it's very easy for me to do it when I'm in Miami. I think it has something to do with the temperature.
Interesting.
Because when I'm in Michigan, where I'm from, I'm hungry at like 8 a.m. As soon as I wake up, I want like something hot. I want eggs or a bowl of oatmeal, like right away. But here, comfort,
Seeking
but
comfort.
also like you're cold and you're burning more and like you're just hungry. It gets your brain kind of moving, right? But here I have my pour over coffee in the morning and I'm not even hungry. I'm not like trying to be strict. I don't even want food until 1 p.m. And that's like, if you're waking up at 7, that's like half your day. You're operating super clear, full of energy because you have nothing in your gut. And I'm way more productive. And then I can have a nice, a good meal at like 1:30. Maybe it's even a smoothie sometimes. And then I have my big meal at night. And then I restart. And that's been working for me because I know you wanted like something specific around my diet. I'm very far from perfect. I'm still fine-tuning it.
Yeah. Do you feel good though? On a daily basis, you feel good?
I have energy. I
Yeah,
feel great.
that's all that
I'm
matters.
recovering and I get to do the things that I love, every day. I'm outside in the sun and I do feel very fortunate to live here. I feel like the body just loves it. Because I'm like in Michigan, I'm always like my knee or my hip or my back. I think it's the temperature.
It's the temperature. That's why I said I'm never doing it again. Spent over a decade in a cold climate area.
Were you
never
in
doing
New
it
York,
again.
right?
New York.
It's hard,
10
man.
years in Manhattan, 13 in the area. I'm like,
Oof.
not doing that anymore.
The body just loves the warmth. It just moves. I can do things like for longer without getting stiff, and it's great, man.
Can we do this whole meditative thing that you mentioned?
Yeah, please. Let's do it. Let's take the next few minutes.
I'm gonna take your. Do we need to dim the lights? What do we?
Oh,
what's
we're
the vibe?
good. He can put a filter on it.
Am I just sitting in silence?
Yeah, so the idea here is just to notice your natural, normal breath. Noticing the inhale as it swirls the inner rings and walls of your nostrils. Noticing the touch of your breath as it gently warms the area right below the tip of your nose. That small triangular area right above the base of your upper lip. If you're joining us, one of the best ways to think of meditation is like the brakes of a car. As soon as you bring your attention to your breath, it slows the speed of your thoughts. The observer changes the observed. Meditation is not complicated. It's a very simple practice of observation for complicated people, complicated minds. Just take 3 more conscious deep breaths together. Beautiful. Good. Thank you. So you can already feel those effects. You know, how do you feel?
Very relaxed. I'm not gonna lie.
Kind of forgot we're here recording a podcast.
I did.
And
I almost have this like slight level of discomfort because now I have to go right back into it, and I almost want to just like live in it and bake in it for another 10 minutes.
And we can do that. And the cool thing is like the meditation, you know, the goal is, or the yoga practice or meditation, it doesn't stop. You know, hopefully it impermeates the rest of your life, and you start to carry that quality of awareness into everything that you do. And that's enlightenment, right? Enlightenment is not just a state of being, but it's a moment in time that we've all experienced, right? Of pure awareness, just full, complete presence. But an enlightened being is someone that just has strung together more of those moments, and it becomes their whole life, which is, you know, obviously the goal. But in a perfect world, it's very difficult. So just try to hold on to some more of those moments throughout your day, or at least create space for those moments. As for me, the purpose of all this, you know, is just to create space, and, you know, not space outside of you. Of course, the atmosphere around us is already shifted from our state of being, but I'm talking about the space inside of you, the space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond, real space. And from that space, there's so much opportunity, there's so much possibility and peace and love.
That shit was phenomenal. I'm going to end with a fire drill question for you.
Ooh.
Quick, on your feet, whatever comes to mind. Ready?
Yes. Let's see.
Favorite food?
Chocolate.
Wow. Okay, we'll talk about that. Favorite country you've ever visited?
India.
Okay. Favorite sport?
Basketball.
Oof. Number one guilty pleasure?
Ooh. A spa day. Does that count?
Is that guilty?
Is that guilty?
No,
I guess that's not guilty.
No, guilty.
Oof.
Is it croissant?
Croissant or a really good TV series?
All right, I'll take that. What's the number one thing on your bucket list today?
Gosh. Oh, God, you got me on that one. Number one thing is I want to go to, right now I want to go to Bhutan.
And we're figuring out immigration.
Yeah.
All right. Love it. Favorite quote of all time?
You're exactly where you're supposed to be.
I love that.
That's one I come back to often.
Exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, or everything happens for you.
Yep.
Similar.
Last question. What do you want to be remembered for when it's all said and done?
I think I just want to be remembered for when I entered a room that I made it brighter. You know, I think no one's gonna really remember any of us for anything we specifically did, right? It just comes back to how you made people feel. So just when I want to be remembered for making things lighter and more loving and more fun, more playful. Simple.
I love it.
Yeah.
Jonah Kest, ladies and
Thank you,
gentlemen.
man. What an honor. Thanks for creating the space for me to share.